You are listening to the Tricorder Transmissions.
WeeklyTrek.
Episode 31.
Welcome to Weekly Trek, your roundup of everything Star Trek that happened this week. New Trek gear announcements, speculation about some new Trek series, reminiscences about the Trek of long ago, and some unexpected uses for Trek soundtracks and much more. So if you've been hiding from the Tal Shiar or just got back from being lost in the Delta Quadrant, we've got you covered on Weekly Trek. I'm Jamie McGregor, a sometime host here on Weekly Trek, and with me is the great John Krikorian from TrekProfiles. G'day, John. How are you?
Fantastic. I'm doing great, Jamie. What a delight it is to get to record Weekly Trek with you. And hello to all of our tens of listeners. I am, as Jamie indicated, I love that gag. I never get tired of it, you know? I am John, as Jamie had indicated, host of TrekProfiles, and now also guest hosting on Weekly Trek with you, my man. And the one thing I want to make sure to mention before we go any further is we have a special announcement. So black alert, Tricorder, our fantastic podcasting network, is going to be organizing a combination holiday giveaway / special prize in honor of our 400th episode on the network, which is coming up at warp speed as we record this. So what is this contest? So we are asking you, our Tricorder tribe, to either tweet at us or post on our Facebook page, and we'll have a special post there on our Facebook page for you to respond to at facebook.com/the Tricorder Transmissions, to tell us either, you got three things you can tell us. You can tell us either your favorite moment from the network, favorite thing that happened on any of our shows, or you can tell us why you love Tricorder so much, or you can just tell us about your holiday greetings for us, whether it's Festivus or whether you celebrate Christmas or Hanukkah or Kwanzaa, whatever it is, or even if you celebrate nothing at all, just send us your holiday greetings. That'd be cool too. Now, we're going to step it up, though, another level, because you will get one entry for just accomplishing the bare minimum. If you send us an audio comment, you'll get 2 entries. And if you send us a video comment of yourself relating one of the 3 things that I have specified, you will get 3 entries for that one try. OMG, LOL, please get on board this train and please do it. So this contest is going to be running on all Tricorder shows up until December 10th. And then what are you going to win? I know that's what you want to know, right? What are you going to win, right?
Yeah, that's what I want to know.
Yeah.
Come on.
Well,
yeah.
If any of you were at our STLV birthday party that we had at this last convention, you'll know that if there's one thing we have tons and tons of, it is awesome Trek swag on this network. So we are putting together a giant collection of swag of really good stuff, which, you know, we're going to leave it a surprise, but I do want to promise that it's going to be good stuff, and we are going to ship it to you. So that's what it is, and we're going to leave that as a surprise, and, you know, hopefully whoever wins will do a cool unboxing video, and then they can send it to us, and we can, you know, put that on our social media, because that would just be totes awesome. So that is the prize. It's going to be a whole box of Trek swag.
And that would get them that would get them a few entries into next year's, for the next competition for the 500th episode.
Yeah, could be. So it's like a combination holiday event / 400th episode event / just Tricorder Tribe awesomeness event, just all rolled into one big bag of awesomeness. And I realize that, like, Shashank, if he were here, could do this with so much more enthusiasm than I can. I'm really enthusiastic about it, but he would, like, just, you know, his voice would be so enthusiastic. And my antimatter is depleted. I just don't have the same level that he would give it. So with that,
well, let me say this much, John. I'm fairly sure we can be confident that whatever our swag is, it will arrive before the next loot crate.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes, that is for sure. So at least that is a low standard, which we will exceed by at least 9 warp factors. So, all right. Are we ready to get into the news?
Yeah, sure. So today on Weekly Trek, we're going to cover a couple of new books that are being released that are Trek related. We'll talk about the Nick Meyer series around his Khan series that's been long referred to and long mooted. We'll talk about a costume that's up for auction, a couple of jackets, and a few other small bits and pieces from the Trek world in popular culture. So that's the plan for today. So where do we want to start, John?
I think we should definitely start with the book, the John Eaves book, for sure. Now, anyone who's listened to Trek Profiles or heard me interviewed about my Trek fandom, the one thing I always say is I'm not a collector. I'm not that person who has to go out and buy all the things. In fact, I buy very few things. And for a person who's been a Trek fan as long as me, the amount of Trek stuff that I have in my house could fill, maybe a few very small boxes. So I have a very modest collection. But the one thing that I do love is the ships. So I will definitely be purchasing the John Eaves coffee table book. It's going to be over 200 pages. And who is John Eaves? If you are one of the few Trek fans who doesn't know who this guy is, I mean, he is the guy who's been involved in designing all kinds of ships for Star Trek for the past 20-something years. I mean, he's the guy who designed the E, for instance. That's all John Eaves, right? And he's just been putting together so many of these, different kinds of designs for all the different kinds of ships, for all the different kinds, especially in 90s and later movies Trek. So just so involved in that. And the guy's handiwork has really infused all of Star Trek for the past 20 years. So I'm super jazzed, and I really want to get my hands on the book. How about you, Jamie?
Yeah, look, I think people sometimes don't really give credit to the people who are the illustrators, the imagination that goes into the concept creation for some of these shows. And I think sometimes they have more of an impact on the actual content of the show than many people would actually think. So I always love to see the behind the scenes sketches and the outlines and how concepts grow. And it seems like this book has got a lot of that in it as well. At STLV, they usually have one of the rooms is set up with a lot of conceptual sketches and artwork that had driven the thought process of what eventually finds its way on screen. And I always like having a look at into that. And my goodness, there's a lot of John Eaves in those areas as well. Plus, he's a fairly regular attendee, I think, at conventions. So if you do like doing that, there's a good chance you'll be able to get your beautiful coffee table book signed. So yeah, this looks like a great idea. I'm glad they're putting it out. And yeah, I'm always struck by, in particular for the Lord of the Rings, like they had a couple of concept artists drawing, and I remember seeing some stuff where Peter Jackson was saying, look, what they were giving me was so important for me then, it kind of had this feedback loop back into what they were actually writing and what the script was and what the story was. So I'm sure John Eaves has been exactly the same, had that exact same impact on Star Trek.
I just finished my Deep Space Nine rewatch, and I think that the design of, for instance, the station and the design of the Defiant, if you look at how they put together some of those shows, I think that there's a through line right there that really explains some of the things that happened in the show, because like the Defiant being so different from the typical design that we saw, I think they started to it changed in some of the ways, some of the writing that they did as part of it. I don't know. I think I'm going pretty far afield here, but help me out, Jamie.
No, absolutely. And I think generally Star Trek tends to recognize the contributions of the people behind the scenes in the creative, on the creative side of things. I mean, is there a bigger Star Trek celebrity than, Mike and Denise Okuda? There probably isn't. And, what was their role? Well, their role was to, do everything, put everything in place and make it all happen, and design stuff and come up with stuff that turns what's on script into reality. And, I'm glad that Star Trek takes time to respect and appreciate these people whose creativity effectively gives us what we see on screen.
Absolutely. And that is not the only book that we have for this week on Weekly Trek. We also have the Scientific American review of Live Long and Evolve, What Star Trek Can Teach Us About Evolution, Genetics, and Life on Other Worlds by Professor Mohammed Noor, professor of biology at Duke University and editor-in-chief of the journal Evolution. The one thing I have to admit that made me laugh is, as I was reading the review in Scientific American, the author of the review says, well, I immediately turned to Chapter 5, Sex, Reproduction, and the Making of New Species. You know, I thought, well, there's a very centered person who could just be like, yep, that's the first thing I looked at for sure. So he had a very interesting look at this idea of how science fiction is sort of informing what scientists are thinking about. And here we have an actual evolutionary type scientist who's writing books about science fiction and how it's informing what he's thinking about in his and giving us his take on things. So I just thought it was a really interesting review. And I'm not sure if I'm going to get the book, but it's something where if it was put in front of me, I would definitely be interested. And you know what? I would probably turn to Chapter 5 first, too, because let's face it, we're all just human beings. And that's, you know, half of what being human is all about is, you know, just thinking about how we organize our family structures and all the things that are involved in that. So how about you, Jamie?
Well, I'm not sure. I think a lot of Star Trek fans would head to whatever chapter deals with whatever Janeway and Paris become, you know, and how that gets explained by modern biology and genetics, you know, from the episode where they both turn into lizards. Although, to be fair, that might actually be in the Sex, Reproduction, and Making of New Species chapter as well. So maybe most Trek fans would instead go to whatever chapter it is to work out how the heck Barclay became a spider. I'm not sure which chapter I'd go to first.
So as we record this, I just got done watching Threshold in my Voyager rewatch.
And you got to a point, I think because I follow you, of course, on Twitter, great Twitter account, and I think you got to a point where you had to turn it off, didn't you? And you're like, this can wait for another day.
So it was the point where the future evolutionary Tom Paris pulls his own tongue out, and I said, okay, that's enough Star Trek for today. So I had to turn that off, and I was like, I'll come back to this later. And I just finished it today. And I can't believe they left the transwarp slug babies behind.
Yes. Well, no, that's child abuse.
How in the world could you do that? Now, I realize it's a show. I realize all the things, right? All the things that you're out there that you're all going to tell me, right? I totally get it. But I'm not sure that even in the sci-fi future that, you know, some parent out there is going to leave their transwarp slug babies behind to fend for themselves. Is that really a Star Trek lesson?
Look, it's a disturbing episode, and I'm hoping that, you know, you might be showing your kids The Lord of the Rings, but I hope you're not showing them Threshold just yet.
No,
because there's a degree of sophistication and maturity that you need to hit before you can truly appreciate Threshold, I think, in the Star Trek canon. And I can't wait to find out what Professor Mohammed A.F. Noor tells us about how the heck that could come about. I will say this, John, I do love these kinds of books. So if I similarly don't have a massive Trek collection of stuff, but I do have a few books. So I'm just looking up at my, I've got Star Trek and Myth and Legend, Star Trek and Philosophy, The Ethics of Star Trek, The Physics of Star Trek, The Religions of Star Trek is another book there. You can tell I listen to Politics too. And I think I love it when you take a concept or an issue and you actually use the 700 hours of Trek that we've got at our disposal and see what are some of the commonalities or the thread lines or the through lines or the things that we can learn about our current world and things that you can learn through seeing what has been put onto screen in Star Trek. So I love that kind of stuff. So this is the kind of thing that would interest me. Bad episodes of Star Trek aside.
I can't let this go, and we can't move on until I give my hot take on Threshold, which was, you know, as I critically looked at it and as I put sort of the feeling that everyone has around the episode that, you know, you're supposed to hate it. You know, I just want to say that I felt like the premise of it and some of the beats in the show could have been a really great episode of Star Trek, but it just failed so cataclysmically in its implementation and execution in so many ways, you know, but the premise, I thought, was very Star Trek and could have been great, but just the premise was great. Everything else, barring the makeup, which was good, was really just an epic fail. But I felt like, if you could go back in time and like a butterfly flapped its wings a little differently, and, maybe they'd served a better lunch in, that day, for the crew, and had they had just a script that had a rewrite from someone who really wrestled with it, like Jacob wrestled with the angel, we really could have gotten something good. But alas, it was not to be.
John, that's a sad. It's a long bridge between the shores of premise and execution, isn't it? Really,
it is. It is. Yes, and this is what happens when you fall off the side. So, speaking of falling off the side and being lost in a nebula, let's take a look at Nick Meyer and his Khan miniseries. So this is from Trek Movie, Love Trek Movie. We are still waiting to see what is going to happen with Nick Meyer's miniseries, and it looks like that they were planning on putting together a miniseries around Khan and Ceti Alpha V, and he had written up a bunch of things for it. And it looks like, they got pretty far into putting together the concept of it, and it looks like it's lost somewhere at CBS. Are we going to be sitting here in 15, 20 years saying that could have been the greatest Trek miniseries of all time, and we just didn't get it? Or do you think that this is going to be salvaged and we're actually going to see it come to the screen one day, Jamie? What do you think?
Well, John, I think it's got a very good premise if we want to have the same conversation over again. But, getting something made is a little harder in Hollywood, it seems. So, yeah, I don't think we've actually heard quite this level of detail from Nick Meyer about what this project was. We all kind of heard about it. We knew it was on the cards. We didn't know exactly what it was. So to hear that it was a 3-hour miniseries, or what he refers to as a 3-night event, for a start, that's very encouraging for me, because it shows that CBS was at least looking at these different formats. So we've talked a couple of times on Weekly Trek about how it would be interesting to see a mini series as opposed to just another TV show, or and now of course we've got an animated show coming up as well. So unfortunately, it looks like it's stuck in what I think is the phrase is development hell. So whether or not it's got to do with the upheavals at CBS and the changes to who's actually running the show, now that Alex Kurtzman has kind of come in and is the impresario of all things Trek, maybe he's not as keen on the idea as some of the other people were. So look, I'd be delighted to see something like this made, because it's a kind of like a bite-sized chunk at a piece of really solid gold Trek history. Who wouldn't want to see the story of Ceti Alpha V, which they've identified was the name, that was the working title of the project. So, yeah, it's just a bit disappointing. Maybe it'll get made, maybe it won't. If I was a betting man, I'd say once these things once they get out, it's been a couple of years, you kind of go, oh, I don't think that's actually going to happen. Is my suspicion and cynicism there warranted, do you think?
Now that they've put Kurtzman in charge, and this is true in any organizational situation, that whenever you have a new person who comes in, they want to put their own fingerprints on things. And that's not a criticism of Kurtzman. That's just human nature. And this is, I've seen it in business. I've seen it in my own life, just with different organizations that I've been involved in. And I don't think that a Star Trek writer's room is going to be any different. So when you put a new person in and say, you're not the showrunner, you're the franchise runner, he's going to want to be able to call his own plays. And so he's going to want to assess. And I think the first thing he probably did was sit down and look at the state of everything and decided on what he wanted to move ahead with and what could be moved to the back burner. Now, and that is not in any way a criticism, by the way, of anything. That's just how people are. So
that's just life.
Yeah, it's just life. And so I think that he made the call to move ahead with Lower Decks, and he wanted to bring that up to the front and get that going, because he saw that would be something that would add something right up front. I hope it gets made, because I will say that I think that Star Trek could definitely benefit from a miniseries style treatment. And you know what I'm thinking of is, as you were talking, Jamie, which is, I don't know if you ever had the chance to see it, but I've been a huge fan ever since I read the books when I was in high school of the Dune series, which is one of the most seminal sci-fi works ever created, without a doubt.
Sure.
And, they had the David Lynch movie, which was great for art and great for just, as a spectacle. But it just didn't have the time allotted to it in a movie that it really deserved, because the books are very dense. And I don't know if you've ever had a chance to see the sci-fi miniseries, but I really enjoyed that movie getting that book. I shouldn't have said movie. That book getting that treatment, because in a 6-hour event, you could give it the space that it needed to be fully developed and brought to the screen and to tell that story. And while I don't think, Khan crash lands on a planet, or is stranded on a planet, makes a go of it, and, whatever happens with Marla, MacGyvers, and them getting through the initial sort of setting up on this tropical paradise, it was supposed
to... They play a lot of canasta, I think.
Do you think that that's exactly how Khan was? It's this. Yeah. This is the guy who said, to Marla MacGyvers when he first meets her, "Come and entertain me." That's all you need to know, right? That's all you need to know about the guy. But them getting their initial go at this world and then responding to the cataclysm, and him slowly going even more insane than he was. I think that would be a story that just fits into like a 5, 6, 7 hours. I don't think you could build a series out of it. And I think a movie would not be enough. I think that it's a Goldilocks problem. And I think that Nick's instincts to put that into a miniseries were just right. So I hope that it's something that comes to fruition, and I would eagerly anticipate it. And I would be really curious to see how they would cast it. I got to tell you, because I would definitely want them to see them actually cast it correctly, and with an actor who could deliver the kind of performance that Ricardo Montalban did. And I think it would be a delight, and I'd be anxious to see it.
Yeah, there's not many people that you think could possibly do that role justice, but it'd be fascinating to see who they found to do it. It's funny what you talk about around Hollywood. It seems that they don't always get that balance right. The Lord of the Rings is a trilogy, given we've been talking a bit about the Lord of the Rings. It's a trilogy. It's definitely 3 movies worth of content and a couple of Blu-rays worth of extended editions. And I still don't think we got the Scouring of the Shire. But The Hobbit, is that a 3-movie piece of work? Turns out, no, it's really not. And so I think, getting that balance between exactly, how many minutes on screen do we actually need to tell this story properly without it feeling too truncated, or without it just going on interminably and requiring large, long passages of terrible CGI, is a different question. So I love the fact that Trek's playing around with its different formats, and fingers crossed that maybe Nick Meyer and Alex Kurtzman can work things out, and we do see this. And I feel the presence of Shashank listening to this saying, please, if you're going to talk about something on Trek that may not happen, you've got to say the obligatory statement, which is, if it doesn't get made, then of course we can turn it into a comic book. Isn't that right? So Nick Meyer can contact IDW and say, I want to make this as a 6-book comic book series. So there you go.
I think that's exactly right, and that's one of the great things about Star Trek today, right, is that this franchise is coming back in a big way, right? We've got books being made, we've got comic books being made, and we've even got acknowledgments of Star Trek on much more popular entertainment, like, for instance, the American show Saturday Night Live did a parody. Now, being in Australia, I assume you didn't get the chance to see it.
No, I think Saturday Night Live would be something like, it would be Sunday early afternoon dead, I think would be what it would be here. I can't actually watch it online either. I've tried because it's geo-blocked, and I'm sure that there's some streaming platform that has SNL in Australia, but I'm not actually sure what it is, so I'd have to go and look too much about that. So, no, I haven't actually seen this, and I haven't seen too much of SNL. I mean, I think the only thing I know about SNL was they did a bunch of Trump and Clinton parodies and that kind of stuff, but which kind of made their way down here. But other than that, I don't know too much about it. Did you get to see it?
I'm sure that I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, but your life is much improved by not having seen it. No, I don't find SNL in the slightest bit funny. And no, I'm not still holding a grudge over the 1970s Shatner guest spot on the show. It's not that at all. I just don't find it funny at all, ever. And there's people in my life who say, oh, did you see The Thing? It's the most hilarious thing. You have to watch The Thing. Sit down and watch The Thing. It's hilarious. Okay, you will now begin having humor. Begin, and I watch it and I'm like, yeah, that's just not funny. So anyway, I just wanted to acknowledge that did happen. It was a thing. And
so if you like SNL, go and check out, there's a Star Trek parody on there.
Yes.
And I'll try and hunt it down on YouTube or somewhere at some point. But fingers crossed it's any good. I mean, I don't know that there's much room for Star Trek parodies after Galaxy Quest just totally, put all the chips in the middle of the table and said, can you do anything ever that's any greater than this? And the answer to that is just going to be no, right?
It is one of the top three Star Trek films ever made, Galaxy Quest, right?
Yeah,
there's
100%.
No doubt about that. All right, let's move on. If you would like a piece of Star Trek history that you could own, now this is unfortunately not the kind of swag we can include in our Tricorder Transmissions birthday holiday / 400th episode swag bag. But if you want a piece of something that is 100% authentic, the skimpy Star Trek costume that William Shatner wore portraying James T. Kirk during the first widely publicized interracial kiss on TV. It is set to sell at auction. Can you believe it? Right? Can you believe it? That is set to go on sale for approximately £46,000, which I guess is probably somewhere in the neighborhood of $100K US dollars. So that is going to be going up for auction. That's pretty exciting. Jamie, are you going to be husbanding your quatloos and putting in a bid?
It depends how Brexit goes. That might bring that cost down a little bit, I think. Maybe it might make that more affordable. Well, look, I'm an aficionado of interracial kisses. So so to speak, one of the things I'm interested in is the career of Sammy Davis Jr., who not a little bit earlier than this actually kissed Nancy Sinatra on the cheek and caused an absolute stir in a TV special that she did. That was non-fiction. I think this was the first kind of fictional interracial kiss, and it was more than just a peck on the cheek.
Scripted is the key thing.
This was scripted,
here.
right?
Scripted is the key thing. Yeah. Here, yeah.
And look, I would say, John, when you put the words William Shatner and Skimpy together, that does worry me a little bit. But what a seminal moment in television history, let alone Star Trek history. And if you're any kind of televisionist, if you like the history of TV, or you're a big Trek fan, and you're a collector of this kind of memorabilia, I can't think of too many more pieces of Trek memorabilia that would have an impact on the popular culture or an impact in American history full stop than this. I mean, is there anything? I'm just trying to think in Trek history. One of the major milestones in American entertainment history would be this interracial kiss between Uhura and Kirk, and you can own a piece of it yourself for just $100K. Cheap at twice the price, surely.
Well, that is the expected auction price, but that has no bearing on what it would actually go for, right? It's when they put it up for auction, if people get hot under the collar and really want it, the price can be significantly above that. So I don't know. It's an interesting piece of television history. It's an interesting piece of Star Trek history. And but I will say to anybody who's listening to this, if you are not familiar with all the backstory and some of the other things that happened during the filming of that episode, I would encourage you to go check it out. I mean, there's stories about how many retakes they kept doing on the kiss because they kept saying they wanted alternative takes in case the censors came after them. And Shatner and Nichols, they intentionally blew all the takes so they couldn't get anything out of it. And then the censors did come after them, their big explanation for how it got through was, well, they don't actually actually want to kiss. They're being forced to kiss by these all-powerful aliens, so therefore it's okay, and the sensors are like, oh, I guess you're right, it is okay. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Yes, we approve. And so, just all these gyrations and machinations that they did to get that show on the air. It really is something that I think is,
and that's without knowing how many behind the scenes push-ups Shatner was doing in that outfit. Like, he must have been doing a ton of push-ups before that, before those scenes was shot. I'm 100% sure.
I think you're right, Jamie. That's what I appreciate you, man. You have a sense of the physicality of the moment, and you got to bring that.
Yes.
in. It's fantastic.
Exactly right. When you finally hold this toga kind of thing in your hands, you'll be imagining the number of push-ups that William Shatner did in it. I'm for sure.
Something that I'm sure will only make the eventual selling price go up. Okay. I wonder if it's been laundered. Okay. Did I say that out loud? All right. Moving on along, we have a couple of little stories here. So we have these new Star Trek themed jackets going on sale. $315 a piece. They are pretty heavy looking jackets. They look like a weird mashup between the TNG jumper tops and the Monster Maroon. Very, very strange looking. Did you have a chance to check these out, Jamie? Are you going to be buying one?
Yeah, I've looked at it. Does it look a little bit like a chef's kind of outfit as well? I don't know. It looks something like, I keep thinking this person's going to make me dinner. Look, it's a little bit odd, but it looks like it's high quality, which is always good when you're looking at that kind of stuff. The idea behind it, I believe, is they're trying to find Trek kind of inspired clothing that you could potentially still treat as streetwear, I think is the idea. I'm not sure that they've succeeded in that, but that's just my immediate take based on it. It's not something that particularly catches my eye. I'd be a pass, but that's just me.
Hard pass for me. These do not look in any way appealing to me. If I had $315 to spend on a jacket, I could think of some very nice leather jackets, or even other Trek jackets I would rather buy. They're certainly not my aesthetic, but
I'd buy 10 copies of that biology book.
And give them away to all your friends.
Yeah. And give them away to other people. That would make me so much happier. Now,
if this episode has not induced narcolepsy in all of our listeners, have I got the solution for you? So Mashable, clickbait, has published an article about how people are using the engine sounds of various Star Trek ships as white noise to go to sleep. They're not using those white noise generators from the fancy store in the mall. Oh no. Someone did a looping supercut on YouTube, and you can go on YouTube and you can find 5 hours of Enterprise D
and the rest
core noise.
And the rest is like 20 hours.
Yeah.
I don't know who's sleeping for 20 hours, but maybe if you're in hibernation or something. But you can get these huge long loops. And the article talks about the evolutionary kind of aspect to this, which is exactly why it is that people like listening to this kind of stuff. But geez, are you one of those kind of people that need a fan on or an air conditioner going or something making noise in order for you to be able to sleep?
Well, Jamie, if I had a bunch of transwarp slug babies and I brought them to the ship and I wanted to put them to sleep, now we'd know what to do. We just bring them down to the engine room, nestle them, cozily right next to the warp core, and they'd get just a great night's sleep, But that's really all a sci-fi parent can do.
I'm not one of those people, so this seems a little weird to me, but it's a little bit like the jackets. There's no accounting for taste.
Yeah.
We're all different in this wonderful world, and if you're the kind of person that needs some kind of background noise, what better sound could you have than to imagine that you're sitting there on the or lying there, as the case may be, on the Enterprise D? I have come across I have come across, I think it might be the same person or someone else has done also these loops of what it sounds to be on the bridge as well, which has got like various different people hitting buttons and the system, cackling away. And in addition, I think I've also seen someone's done a massive loop of the DS9 ops. What the sounds, the background noises, and it's kind of like people going up and down the turbo lift and in and out of doors. No one's talking, so presumably everyone's evolved to a state of mental telepathy or something or other, but there's like 6 hours of just the noises of the DS9 ops, and I think this kind of stuff is so clever and interesting, but I'm not the kind of person that requires it to actually sleep. So
me neither.
Have you come across those others?
Me neither, but my wife is one of those. She will fall asleep to the television every night. And you know what's funny is that I'm an early bird, right? And she's a night owl, so I'll get up way earlier than her. I'll look at what is on the TV, and it is always like the most bizarre things that are playing. Like when I get up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and I'm just like, what is this? Like what is this? Because they put the weirdest stuff on, and it's just always some really bizarre movie. Like just the other day, they had some movie on where a bunch of kids in school, like elementary school kids, get the cooties, they turn into vampires and eat all the teachers. That's the movie that was on when I got up in the morning. And I was like, this is just bizarre. I don't want this stuff on when I'm sleeping. I just find it crazy.
Again, John, a fantastic premise, undone by its execution.
It was right at some scene where, and again, this is just what was on. Some cop pulls up in front of the school and he sees all these kids behind the fence and he's like, what are these kids doing in here? And he puts his hands on the fence and the kids eat his fingers. And I thought, this is just beyond crazy. Anyway, we're getting pretty far afield here. All right, Jamie, where can people...
That's the joy of WeeklyTrek. That's the joy of WeeklyTrek.
You never know what you're going to get.
Let's be honest, it's been a bit of a slow week in Trek news. So, but it's been a blast to go through the different stories with you, John. So I've had a great time.
Me too as well. And thank you for adjusting your schedule so that we could get together to record this thing.
No, all good. All right. So look, if people want to talk to me, I'm on Twitter at jmac_ref, JMAC_REF, and always happy to talk Star Trek with anyone out there who's a listener to the fantastic Tricorder Transmissions Network.
I, of course, am John, the host of Trek Profiles right here on the Tricorder Transmissions Network, and Twitter is probably the best place to get a hold of me, where I am at Trek Profiles, and I'm also on Facebook at facebook.com/Trek Profiles, and also on the web at www.trekprofiles.com. If you're sensing a theme, that's probably what it is. So we have enjoyed bringing you this edition of Weekly Trek. Please don't forget to tweet us using the Tricorder Tribe hashtag to get a chance to enter our competition for the bag of amazing Trek gear, or you can post on Facebook as well. And of course, if you want to support the Tricorder Transmissions, we would love to get your support, and you can do that via Patreon. So patreon.com/the Tricorder Transmissions. Support at any level will get you access to early releases and unedited episodes, which will be very embarrassing for me. So maybe you shouldn't subscribe to that because I sounded horrible on this recording. But hey, if that's what you want, go for it. And we'll be seeing you all next time right here on Weekly Trek.